You know, you and I first talked, I guess, in email. I don't know. It seems like years ago because we've been playing phone tag back and forth. But for the last at least 2 months now, Jake, I've had people email and post messages. You've got to talk with Jake Towne. You got to talk with Jake Towne. You know, he's like Ron Paul and Adam Kokesh, except he's like really like an accountant too. He's like really detailed, and you got to check this guy out, and you're gonna love him. And so I went to your website, and I will say I've never seen a candidate for any office more prepared than you are, at least on paper. You've got it all spelled out. So, Jake, who are you? Who is Jake Towne?
Sure. I'm someone who got fed up with the government. The past 7 or 8 years, I've been working as an engineer in the semiconductor industry. The last 4 were actually over in Shanghai, China, and that's where I kind of saw what life was like without liberty. And I started looking into things, studying a little bit more into economics, studying why we were going to war, and I decided that I needed to get back to the country and run for Congress.
Now you're running from the 15th District in Pennsylvania, the Fighting 15th. Why is it called the Fighting 15th?
Well, what we're fighting for is we're fighting for our liberties, and the 15th District is about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia in the wonderful Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And there's plenty of people out here that are willing to fight and get back what we lost over the last decades from government intrusions into our lives. And
who's your opponent? And also, not to be facetious, I'd also like to know, after you answer that question, what is it that we've lost in the last, say, decade?
Sure. Well, the opponent, I'm running as an independent under no political party. It appears that I will be against the incumbent Republican in the general election, as well as his name is Charles Dent. And one of the mayors of the local city is running a Democrat primary backed by the White House. His name is John Callahan, so he'll be my opponent. They're both they both appear to be big money status candidates. On the second question, what we've lost is we've lost our economic freedoms and we've lost our civil liberties. I mean, you can go back, you can take a look at what the Patriot Act has done. You can look at the freedom of speech infringements. You can look at the Fourth Amendment search and seizure every time you walk into an airport. On the economic side, you can watch the government do all these bailouts and corporatism. You can watch them debase your money. So there's plenty of things, and like for instance, like the Federal Reserve, there's still $2 trillion in off-the-balance sheet transactions, and no one knows except for these private bankers at the Fed. The Congress doesn't know, the President doesn't know. There's no accountability in government. There's no transparency, and if we don't wake up real soon, we're going to be paying the cost of this endless spending from our government.
When I hear someone mention, as you did, sort of an apocalyptic vision of what's happened and where we are, it almost sounds like a train coming right off the tracks. Now, I envision Jake Towne, a guy who wants to put the train back on the tracks. You get to Congress, how are you going to do that? I mean, it's it's a tall order. What do you do in Congress?
Sure. I mean, the one thing that any congressman can do is they can introduce bills, and it's very easy to introduce bills. All you literally do is drop it into a bucket. Now, with one voice out there out of 435, there is a valid point that you need, you need to basically be able to take over Congress. You need like 250 folks like Congressman Ron Paul out there trying to drive for these changes, but the thing that I would have is, as an independent, I would have a pretty strong voice and would be able to basically represent people in my district and bring attention to all these problems that we have going on and suggest the solutions. Because the solutions to a lot of these problems that we have, the unemployment problem, our money debasement, they're fairly easy to solve, but there's no political will to attack them.
Well, speaking of specific issues, the economy is on everyone's mind, and consumer confidence numbers came out yesterday that were much weaker than expected. Of course, Jake, believe that Americans should not view themselves as consumers in the first place, and if you answer a survey as a consumer, then you deserve what you get. But assuming for a moment that most people still do consider themselves consumers, they're scared. they're worried, Jake. So what happened to our economy? We can say, well, banks and brokers got bailed out, but what happened? I mean, why are we where we are, and what would you do to fix it?
Well, the key thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the crux of the matter is the government interventions into our economy. What Ludwig von Mises always wrote about was the difference between, in a book called Human Action, was the difference between private enterprise and free enterprise. And we sort of have a hybrid system with the private enterprise, but we have the government basically sponsoring monopolies in a lot of industries. But where we need to go is just free enterprise. So government does have a role if there's fraud committed, acts of aggression, and to protect individual liberties. But it's not the government's role to centrally plan everything out. We need to do planning, but we don't need to do it on the master central planning level. What we need to do is have individuals doing the planning, and we need to also learn and realize that the problems of spending aren't going to be cured by additional spending. It's just not going to happen.
Well, how do you answer the folks who say, that sounds great, Jake, but the government owes me X amount for my Social Security check, the government owes me this amount for my food stamps, and for my Medicare and Medicaid, and I got my student loan backed by the government. I got my mortgage on my house is backed by the government now. My car loan is backed by the government. Gee whiz, Jake, doesn't the government owe me a big fat paycheck?
Well, here's what my reply to that. And we're in a situation where pretty much here's 3 words for you: government has nothing. It's pretty much a law. To first give you something, it needs to be taken from somebody else. And yes, in the case of Social Security and Medicare, you did, in a lot of cases, people were taxed money to be paid back, but the government has already spent that. I mean, the current workers are the ones that are actually being taken from to pay people. So as an engineer, I'm a problem solver, and the first thing you do with any problem is you contain it. And you contain it. This type of problem needs to be contained by stopping any new taxes, like the health care tax that they're talking about, the energy tax, and we also need to stop all new spending, period. So first you contain it. The second thing you do is you address the root cause. So you cut spending and you cut taxes. And that's the key part. And where do you cut tax, or where do you cut the spending? And really, some of the largest areas, like we spend probably close to $1.5 trillion on our military expenditures, and probably over $1 trillion is actually tied to our adventures abroad and bases abroad in 150 countries. And what we need to do is cut that military spending. And the second layer of cutting that we need to do is on the redundant departments. We have 50 state departments of education. We don't need a federal Department of Education that's spending over $100 billion every year. And then third, that's actually when we need to start chipping away at these programs that just won't be around. And I think the subject of how to get out from Social Security and Medicare is a whole different one, but that would be something that would be left a bit later into the reaction. If government ever does react the way it's going right now, they're just going to spend us into oblivion.